How does a people survive 4,000 years of oppression? How do you lose your country, your temple, and your language? And how do you reclaim them? How has a civilization that every empire in history has sought to destroy still survived to this day? And why did all the other ancient civilizations perish, while this one did not? The Jewish people are the only ancient civilization still here, not as a memory, not as a museum exhibit. They are a people living 4,000 years later with the same language, the same texts, and the same traditions. Every empire that sought to destroy them has perished. They are still here. It all began 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia with a man named Abraham who heard a voice and turned away from everything he knew. With a man named Abraham who heard a voice and turned away from everything he knew. What has happened since then is unlike anything else in human history. Slavery in Egypt, 40 years in the desert, the reigns of David and Solomon, the destruction of the temple, exile to Babylon, the Roman conquest, a 2,000-year diaspora spreading across every continent, the Holocaust, and then, seemingly impossible, the rebirth of a nation. This is the history of the Jewish people in a nutshell, the oldest story still being written. Around 2000 BC, a man named Abraham received instructions in the city of Ur in southern Mesopotamia that were described in the Torah as a direct command from God. Leave your country, leave your people, leave your father's house. Go to the land I will show you. Abraham set out. This single act, a man leaving the most advanced urban civilization of the ancient world for an unknown destination, marks the birth of three of the world's major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Together, these religions account for more than half of the world's current population. To understand the development of these three religions, we must first understand the Jewish people. Abraham heads northwest, passing through the Fertile Crescent towards the land of Canaan, the area now known as Israel and Palestine. He arrived there as a stranger, a nomad. He was a man with his flock and servants who had received a promise from a God that no one around him worshipped. The promise is clear. These lands, the very lands he is passing through now, will belong to his descendants. They will become a great nation. And through them, all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. For the first few generations, Abraham's descendants, Isaac, then Jacob, and Jacob's 12 sons, live as semi-nomadic shepherds in Canaan. Politically, these lands did not belong to them. They shared them with the Canaanites, Philistines, and Hittites. They were a tribe, not yet a nation. Then came Egypt. The story of how Abraham's descendants came to Egypt begins with jealousy. Jacob's favorite son, Joseph, was sold into slavery by his brothers. In Egypt, he is imprisoned and seemingly forgotten. However, because he can interpret dreams, he is brought before Pharaoh. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream of 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh appoints him as his second in command. Joseph saves Egypt from famine. His family, his father Jacob, his brothers, and their entire households come to Egypt to escape famine. They are welcomed. They settle in the land of Goshen in the Nile Delta. They lived prosperously for several generations. Their numbers grew. Then, as the Torah tells us, a new Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph. Seeing this growing foreign population, he perceives it as a threat. The Israelites became slaves. For 400 years, or however you calculate it, the descendants of Abraham built the cities of Egypt. They make bricks. They labor under the sun. They cry out to God. According to the Bible, God heard them. Moses was born during this time. An Israelite child, condemned to death by Pharaoh's order to kill all male Hebrew babies, is saved by his mother when she puts him in a basket and floats it down the Nile. He is found by Pharaoh's daughter. He is raised in the palace. He is an Israelite, growing up as a prince of Egypt, until he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. He kills the Egyptian. He flees into the desert. There, he becomes a shepherd in Midian. He got married. He lives quietly for decades. Then, in a burning bush that is not consumed by fire, he hears the same voice that Abraham heard. Return, lead my people out of here. Although we have summarized this process, it represents a specific period of time. This is followed by the Exodus from Egypt, the 10 plagues, the parting of the sea, 40 years in the desert, Mount Sinai, and the 10 Commandments. Moses was given the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, on the mountain. By the time the Israelites reached the borders of Canaan 40 years after leaving Egypt, they had become a nation. They were a nation. They had a law. They had a covenant. Their identity was so distinct and clearly defined that no subsequent disaster could ever completely erase it. That is the key. They wrote it down. They wrote down every detail. From that moment on, nothing that befalls this people, every exile, every destruction, every dispersion, could annihilate them. And for one simple reason, they carried their identity within a text. A text can withstand everything, a city cannot. Moses led the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness. It was a time filled with hunger, thirst, rebellion, and doubt. He brought the 10 Commandments down from Mount Sinai. He transformed a community of slaves into a nation with laws, a covenant, and a sense of identity. Then God said to him, "You shall not enter the promised land. You may see it. You may stand on the mountaintop and look upon it, but you shall not cross the river Jordan." Why? The Torah provides an explanation. At a place called Meribah, when the Israelites were dying of thirst, God told Moses to speak to a rock and water would flow. However, Moses, weary and angry with his people, struck the rock with his staff instead. Water came out, but Moses had disobeyed. He had not controlled his temper. He acted out of anger rather than following God's command. After 40 years of faithful service, he was unable to enter the land he had spent his entire life striving to reach on foot because of that single moment of human weakness. Commentators have been debating this issue for 3,000 years. Was the punishment fair? Was it proportionate? Some argue that Moses was punished not for striking the rock itself, but for the impression it gave that the miracle came from him rather than from God. A leader who takes credit for something belonging to God cannot lead his people into a covenant relationship with that God. Others argue more simply, Moses belonged to the generation of slavery. He had been shaped by Egypt. The promised land, however, required a generation born free people who had never known chains and had grown up in the wilderness with only the law, the covenant, and the sky. Moses could see that land, but he could not enter it. He died on Mount Nebo, gazing westward. According to the Torah, God buried him in a place that no one could find. Think about that. The most important figure in Jewish history, the man who spoke face to face with God and brought the law that has shaped Western civilization for 3,000 years, died just one step short of his goal. And the story did not end there. It continued without him. This is the first great lesson of Jewish history. The story is always greater than any individual within it. The Israelites are in Canaan, but Canaan is not empty. The land that Abraham walked upon 2,000 years ago, which God promised to his descendants, is teeming with people. The Canaanites, the Philistines, the Hittites. These lands are inhabited by city-states with their own walls, armies, and gods. The book of Joshua recounts a military conquest. Cities fall, one after another. The demolition of Jericho's walls. The entire region was captured rapidly. However, archaeology tells a more complex story. In some cities, evidence of destruction around the right time can be seen. In others, there is continuity, the same people, pottery, and culture, with no trace of conquest. It is possible that the Israelites conquered some regions, merged with others, and gradually distinguished themselves from the surrounding peoples through their distinctive religious practices. In any case, by around 1100 BC, the Israelites were settled in Canaan. Rather than being organized as a kingdom, they were organized as a loose confederation of 12 tribes, each controlling its own territory, and, in times of crisis, governed by figures referred to in the Bible as the judges. This system barely worked. Each generation faces a new threat. The most dangerous were the Philistines. Settled along the Mediterranean coast, they were a technologically advanced people who possessed iron weapons at a time when most Israelites were still using bronze. They were advancing inland. They defeated the Israelite armies and seized the Ark of the Covenant. The pressure to unite became unbearable. Around 1050 BC, the tribes demanded a king. The prophet Samuel tells them what having a king would entail. He would take their sons to serve in his army, their daughters to work in his household, and their fields to provide for his officials. But the people insist. They want to be like other nations. The first king is Saul. Tall and handsome, he was chosen by God through Samuel. He starts well, but ends badly. He is tormented by what the Bible describes as an evil spirit, becomes increasingly unstable, and clashes more and more with the young shepherd and musician who captivates everyone. David. When he was a young man, David killed Goliath. He worked for Saul. He flees when Saul tries to kill him. He persuades people to follow him into the desert. After Saul dies in battle against the Philistines, David becomes king. Over the next 40 years, David's deeds change the whole area. He achieves decisive victories against the Philistines. He captures Jerusalem, a Jebusite city on the border between the northern and southern tribes that belonged to no one, and establishes it as his capital. This was a smart political move. Jerusalem didn't belong to any one group, so no tribe could take offense. He took the Ark of the Covenant there. He establishes Jerusalem as the center of his empire and his faith. David wants to build a temple. However, God tells him, "You are a warrior. You have shed too much blood. Your son will have to do this." Solomon is his son. Around 960 BC, Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem. According to the Torah, the temple is made of cedar wood from Lebanon, gold from Ophir, and craftsmen from Phoenicia. The Ark of the Covenant, which contains the original tablets of the Ten Commandments, is kept in the Holy of Holies, the holiest room in the temple. Only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. Under Solomon's rule, Israel was at the height of its political might for one generation. It was a kingdom that controlled the commerce routes between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Solomon was famous in the ancient world for his intelligence. A temple that would be the center of Jewish devotion for the next 400 years. But then everything went wrong. Rehoboam, Solomon's son, made a big mistake. When the northern tribes implore him to ease the harsh labor imposed by Solomon, he threatens to make it even worse. The northern tribes leave. Israel divided into two kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south, with Jerusalem in the middle. The two kingdoms never reunite. In 722 BC, Assyria destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. The 10 tribes were taken into exile and spread out across the Assyrian Empire. They lost their identity and became part of the empire, the 10 lost tribes of Israel. The 10 tribes of Israel that went missing, they disappeared. The southern kingdom of Judah lasted until 586 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. The temple, the center of Jewish devotion for 4 centuries, was destroyed. The Ark of the Covenant disappears. The people of Judah were sent to Babylon. There is nothing left. The land, the temple, the Ark, the king. Only the words remain. The Jews sent to Babylon achieved something amazing. They started to write. They collected, sorted, and kept safe every narrative, law, and prophecy that they could remember. During the Babylonian exile, the Torah began to resemble the version we have today. The Babylonians invented the synagogue, a place where people could congregate and pray without the need for a temple, sacrifices, or land. They transformed the disaster into art. They incorporated the disaster into the story. When the Persian Emperor Cyrus the Great took over Babylon in 539 BC, he allowed the Jews to return, and some of them did. They returned. They started building again. But one thing would never be the same again. They now realized that being Jewish didn't mean having a land or a temple. They needed a text that you can carry with you wherever you go. The temple was destroyed, the ark vanished, the people were exiled to Babylon, yet the Jewish people survived. All the other ancient peoples who lost their temples, lands, and capitals disappeared within a generation or two. The Assyrians exiled the 10 northern tribes in 722 BC. Those tribes disappeared. They were assimilated. They disappeared. The 10 lost tribes of Israel vanished precisely because exile without a portable identity wipes out a people. But Judah survived Babylon. Why? Because in Babylon, the Jewish people did something that no other ancient people had done before. They decided that God was not bound to any particular place. They realized that there was no need for a temple in which to pray. They realized that they did not need a land to be a people. This identity exists in a text which can be carried anywhere. The synagogue was invented in Babylon. It was a revolutionary idea, a place of gathering and prayer that required no sacrifices, priests, or sacred geography, just a community and a text. The Torah took its final form in Babylon. Every story, law, and genealogy was compiled, organized, and preserved. The catastrophe of exile gave rise to the greatest act of cultural preservation in ancient history. This raises the question, was the destruction of the first temple a catastrophe, or the event that saved Judaism? Had the temple never been destroyed, Judaism might have remained a local religion dependent on a specific building and a single priestly institution and ritual sequence. The destruction forced it to become more universal. Universal. It became a faith that could be practiced anywhere in the world by anyone who had the necessary texts. The rabbis who compiled the Talmud in the centuries after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE provide a fascinating response to this question. They say, God was preparing the next vessel before the previous one was broken. Interpret that however you will. There is a wall on the western side of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is not the temple. The temple has been gone for 2,000 years. This wall is all that remains of the retaining wall that Herod the Great built around the Temple Mount in the 1st century BC. It is a foundation wall, a supporting structure. It is not even the temple itself. And yet, for 2,000 years, Jews from every corner of the world have come to this wall to pray. They press their hands against the stones. They tuck their folded prayers into the cracks between the blocks. They stand before the wall and weep, which is why it is known as the Wailing Wall in many languages. The stones themselves are extraordinary. The largest of Herod's blocks weighs over 500 tons. Modern engineers have calculated that transporting stones of this size using ancient technology would have been impossible. And yet, there they are. But it is this that stops you in your tracks. Prayers have been offered unceasingly at the Western Wall for 2,000 years, throughout the Roman occupation. Throughout Byzantine Christian rule, when Jews were banned from Jerusalem entirely, except on Tisha B'Av, the anniversary of the temple's destruction, when they were allowed to come and weep at the ruins. They have been offered throughout the Crusades, when Jews were massacred in Jerusalem. They have been offered throughout Mamluk, Ottoman, British, and Jordanian rule, including the period between 1948 and 1967, when Jews were barred from entering the wall once again. Every time they were permitted to return, they did so to the same wall, to the same stones, to the same prayers. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israeli paratroopers reached the Western Wall for the first time in 19 years. Photographs of those soldiers, hardened paratroopers captured while weeping, are among the most extraordinary images of the 20th century. There is something about this wall that defies rational explanation. This is not the temple. It is the foundation of the platform that once supported the temple. In architectural terms, it is a retaining wall. Yet everyone who stands before it, whether Jewish, a believer, or neither, feels something. The stones bear the touch of 2,000 years of human longing. They bear the touch of prayers in Hebrew, Aramaic, Ladino, Yiddish, Russian, and English. They bear the touch of the hands of people who have walked from every corner of the world simply to touch this wall. Perhaps this explanation is enough, whatever meaning you derive from it. We started with 4 questions. How does a people survive 4,000 years of oppression? How does a people lose their country, their temple, and their language? And how do they reclaim them all? How has a civilization that every empire has sought to destroy still survived to this day? And why did all the other ancient civilizations perish, while this one did not? Here is the answer. All other ancient peoples built their identity around a place, a temple, a city, a land. When these were destroyed, their identity vanished with them. However, the Jewish people built their identity around a text. A text can withstand everything, a building cannot. The Torah was compiled in Babylon after the temple was destroyed. The synagogue was invented in Babylon because there was no longer a temple in which to worship. The Talmud was compiled after the second temple was destroyed. Each catastrophe created a new vessel for the same identity. 4,000 years, Egypt, Babylon, Rome, the Crusades, the Inquisition, pogroms, the Holocaust, and the text is still here. The language is still here too. The prayers are still here. The people are still here. The Hebrew language, which had been extinct as a spoken language for 2,000 years, surviving only in religious rituals and scholarly works, was revived in the 19th and 20th centuries, and is now spoken as a mother tongue by millions. It is the only language in human history to have been revived after dying out. The lands that had been lost for 2,000 years became a state in 1948. The Western Wall, where prayers have been offered unceasingly for 2,000 years by every empire that has sought to separate the Jewish people from it, is still there. The same stones, the same prayers. Every empire that has sought to destroy this people has perished. The story is still being written. This is the oldest story in the world, and it is not yet over. I would like to thank all our viewers who have stuck with us until now. May God protect you. Subscribe and follow us.